Henrietta Vansittart, a remarkable woman, a Victorian, lived in Victorian times. She was an overlooked engineer and inventor. The drawing that you can see there is a technically exacting diagram of a shaped blade in its compound curve. And this is typical of many drawings that she drew herself when applying for patents and informing engineering companies. So she is famous and well known for her invention, which is the Lowe-Vansittart propeller. And there's a model of it, which is a beautiful wooden model, which is a scale model, and it's in the Science Museum. Very difficult to get to see it because it's not actually on display, but it is in their collection. So both the drawing and the model is in the collection at the Science Museum in Kensington. So her invention was fitted to many Admiralty ships, typically these huge three-masted gunboats, and in total about 30 huge boats, her various invention, that propeller, versions of that propeller were fitted to these boats. Her expertise was immense, and yet she had a very humble beginning and a very humble start in life and no formal education. So to have achieved that is quite amazing. So how did she achieve this? You know, her beginnings were modest. She was the fourth of 10 children. She was born in Ewell in Surrey. Her father, James Lowe, in his youth had spent many years at sea aboard a whaling ship. I think he was away for about 8 years in total. So that was when I think he went to sea about the age of 14, 15. And when he came back on his return, he's apprenticed to a master mechanic, a well-known chap. His name's not up there, but he was Edward Shorter. And both of them went into business, developing machines for perpetual motion. At the time, the paddle was the only way that boats used to get around. It was a cumbersome, partially submerged method of propulsion, and improvements for greater maneuverability on ships were sought. And it was Lowe's observation as a young man on a whaling ship of the movement of tail fins of whales which inspired his invention. So the family moved from the idyllic countryside of Ewell and they moved to the harsher city environment of Southwark, which was close to the Thames, and all the wharves and ships and business and imports and exports and shipping life. And as early as 1838, James Lowe files various patents for his version of the screw propeller. So he's got 2 or 3 patents going during Henrietta's young life. So the cost of registering patents was very high, and protection from infringement very difficult, because people would be just copying them, and you can't protect yourself from that. So despite the Admiralty putting his inventions to use on their gunboats, they declined to enumerate him. He sought redress through the courts, all of this costing money. They duly found for him, but to no avail. The Royal Navy or the Admiralty did not recompense him financially in any way. So he sank deeper into debt. Shall I get another? Yes, they're reduced to poverty, and her father's struggles for recognition and financial reward elude him. So home in Charlotte Street, which is in Southwark, at the time, according to census reports, 30 people in total shared that home. 5 families. So it was pretty dire living in that area. So the entire family was subjected to a short stay in the workhouse. The buildings around that area, because they're close to the Thames, were particularly grim and prone to flooding due to their proximity to the Thames, and this was pre-London barrier time. So it was also particularly distressing as James Lowe's wife had a considerable inheritance, and he spent every last penny of it developing his propellers. And he was poverty-stricken. So therefore, they were sent to the workhouse, which is the Bermondsey workhouse, the plan of which is there. It was known to flood frequently, but despite all these travails, Henrietta was loyal to her father and continues to accompany him to the many sea trials. And the sea trials were quite complex affairs. The ships had to go into dry dock. The propellers had to be fitted. They were timed. They went out to sea for hours. So it was quite involved and quite an involving situation for her and her father. She seems to be the only child who accompanied him on these trips. So as she continued as a father's assistant, writing letters, making drawings, and attending all ships' trials, she gained a unique understanding and knowledge of marine engineering. So things were pretty bleak then during her teenage years. So as they continued to, her father was obsessively continuing with his invention. Her mother, Maria, had connections with the Seymours of Sion House and the Vansittart family. Strings were pulled and an agreement was made. Henrietta ventured forth to Paris. A little bit ahead of myself there with that slide. So she ventures forth to Paris, and at the British Embassy marries Captain Frederick Vansittart, a well-to-do family of Dutch origin. They're based in Windsor, and they still have a family seat around the outskirts of London somewhere. So he was lately of the East India Company, and he'd done 5 years, completed 5 years service in India. And he came back, he'd had enough, and he then sold his commission. If anyone knows how you make money from selling your commission in the army, I would like to know about that, so I'm not quite sure. But he made enough money by doing this to purchase a house in Mayfair. So Henrietta and Frederick lived in Mayfair. So she was moving in exalted social circles. And she still continues to help her father going to sea trials, so she hasn't given up on him. But in these social circles, she meets the aristocrat, Sir Edward Bulwer-Lytton. And this is... has anyone been to Nebworth House? It's the most fantastic place. Now, that is a Tudor mansion, or it was, and all those dragons and mythical creatures Bulwer-Lytton put on there to change it. He Gothicized the whole thing. He seemed to have had a magnetic personality by all accounts. He and Henrietta began a 12-year relationship. She was known as his mistress. At various times it was spoken about in Parliament. That's why we have the knowledge about their affair. Not sure particularly how public it was. But he was an MP in Disraeli's government. He was also a hugely successful writer and a friend of Dickens. So she did move on in very interesting circles there. And Edward Bulwer-Lytton was a very influential man, so he may well have helped her and her father. They may well have financed a few more ship trials. At the top here in Hereford Archives Centre are the letters written by Henrietta to Edward Bulwer-Lytton. Her many letters to him reveal a personal side to Henrietta as she discusses her husband, her money worries, and her devotion to Bulwer-Lytton. So the family seat at Nebworth, a Tudor mansion, was completely Gothicised, and there is the incredible skyline of that building. Harry Potter films are now shot there. Bulwer-Lytton leaves, he dies 1870. He leaves money to Henrietta and slightly less money to her husband. So Bulwer-Lytton is famous for penning the worst opening line of a book called, the sentence starts, "It was a dark and stormy night." So there is actually a competition in America, and it's called the Bulwer-Lytton Worst Sentence Competition. It was a dark and stormy night. I always thought it was quite a good start, but he was very famous in his time. These days, not so much. But his family seat, when I went to visit the house, they were very generous. When I told them I was researching Henrietta, gave me huge thick books about on the life of Bulwer-Lytton. So I was very grateful for that. So the legacy enables the purchase of 4 Maids of Honour Row. And this is the 4 Maids of Honour Row. It's a watercolour. It's in the collection of the Richmond Borough Art Collection, a lovely watercolour. I think it's about late 1760s or something. And there is 4 Maids of Honour Row today. And there are parts of the palace, Richmond Palace, the gate which we were just been talking about. And the reason why she wanted to buy this is that she believed she had connections to the ancient Seymour family. So she had slight illusions or delusions of grandeur. And it's a notable house with its interesting occupants throughout the years. And I recently had the pleasure of visiting the interior to see the fabulous Baroque panels painted by Antonio Gioli, an Italian painter. So what else? Yes, so always upwardly mobile, it seems. They moved on to Montpelier Row, buying 4 houses in a rather bad state of repair. So this is Montpelier Row. It's the kind of pink house at the very end of Montpelier Row. They sold 3 of them, and they settled into number 1 Montpelier Row. It was named, or Henrietta named it, St. Maur's Priory. I think it's a deviation on the name of Seymour. She adorns the end elevation. When you drive by it these days, if you drive by it, you'll see some statuary and relics sort of stuck into the plasterwork on the outside. And the doorway, it's not used anymore. The doorway now is on the Montpelier Row side. But there were various articles in the local newspaper about a row she had with a neighbour opposite. So that's how we can place her there. So yes, it's a very interesting house, and she did make it her own. She believed that the relics that she found in Hounslow Priory again belonged to her ancestors, so she managed to, sort through the rubble and put them on her house. Yes, so a census places them here in approximately 1876. The stunning terrace was built by retired Captain James Gray as a speculative investment. The interiors of number 1 are very much reminiscent of a wooden sailing ship, and observers mention the many ship models on display in her home when she lived there. So Henrietta, despite her complicated personal life, had won several medals for for her propeller. She had patents registered in the UK and the USA. So if you wanted a worldwide patent, you had to have it registered in the USA. She travelled worldwide to various fairs to promote her invention, and it was a considerable improvement on her father's. Well, I forgot to mention that her father, that's right, so I'll just read from that. So it doesn't say that. So yes, I forgot to mention that her father dies in a I forgot to put that in, actually. But her father dies suddenly in a road accident, so that makes Henrietta even more keen to carry on with his life's work. So let's get back to her worldwide travel on ships across the world, and back to her appreciation of her invention. It's been praised for its ability to save fuel, its lack of vibration. They even tested it with a thimble of water on the propeller to see if anything spilt whilst it was in motion. Apparently it didn't spill. So it was commended for its improved manoeuvrability and ability to reverse with ease. And a Times article praises her accomplishments, and now she has a public persona. In 1882, she publishes a book, and that over here is, it took me years and years to find this image of Henrietta, and I only found it when I finally got a copy of the book that she'd had printed, and it was in the frontispiece. The image in the frontispiece shows Henrietta holding a scale model of her invention. Her narrative inside the book, she's written it all herself, whilst praising her father as a devoted daughter, seems to undermine her own achievements. Yet the publication is bursting with her engineering knowledge and amazing diagrams which her father could never have created. And as a woman without formal education, this is very impressive. I think I've lost my page. Oh, yeah. So the last year of her life, she travels to the North East Coast exhibition to promote her product. I assume taking the train from Richmond. But these exhibitions in various cities kind of aped the 1851 exhibitions that were the first one that we had in London. And a sort of a glass palace, there it is, quite grand. And in there, I think you can see some little model boats hanging in a funnel. All marine engineering paraphernalia, engineering works. She travelled there. She was never to return to Montpelier Row. She was found wandering the streets and subsequently became distressed. And she was taken to the Newcastle lunatic asylum. She was described as being aggressive and a danger to others. In 1883, she died there after staying 3 months. The cause of death was recorded as anthrax and acute mania. She was buried in the churchyard there. 1 year later, Frederick sold up and moved to Brighton. He lived for another 20 years. So the last and final slide. So I should have said at the beginning, I'm an artist and I've been intrigued with the life of this woman for the last 7 or 8 years since I moved into the borough of Richmond. There was no visual information regarding details of Henrietta, so I invented one, basically. So that is my painting of Henrietta, which I've called Dark and Stormy, in homage to the sentence written by the aristocrat Bulwer-Lytton. Moment of Mania at the top there, which I sold at the Saatchi Gallery, and a drawing of what I think Frederick might have looked like. So there's quite a lot still to find out about Henrietta, but she, her association with Richmond has intrigued me. They're both beautiful houses, and for someone with no formal education who spent time in the workhouse to end up such a lovely place, but yet to have such a terrible end, I think is a fantastic story. So that's it. Thank you very much.